So while we get ready to start, I got a little song for you. It's called Revelation Song by Phillips, Craig, and Dean. Hey, Kathy. Alrighty. All right, we can go ahead and get started. You can probably tell I'm not at home, but we've got a little thing going on. We've got the sound people up, going to give a little tutorial on all the soundboard and all that at the church, and that's going on at 7. I get done and go out there and see what I got to know to keep from tearing it up if I ever have to do it. But anyway, it's good to see everybody on so far, and a couple of quick things about prayer list and all that. We did find out about Randy Dowdy. He had to go back to the hospital at Union because he was having gallbladder problems, and they took his gallbladder out, and he is supposed to go back to the rehab center either this evening or tomorrow. So keep praying for Randy, and then Meredith, she's supposed to get her stitches out, and she's still pretty sore and stiff and all that. So remember her, and I appreciate all of y'all that have been taking food to them and supplying them with things for she and Frank and Isabella. Also. We had a Keith Simmons on our prayer list Sunday that Mark Spellbring added, and he lost his fight yesterday and left this earth to go on to be with the Lord. And then so did we. Also were praying for Daryl Overpeck from Dana that had an accident, and he also went to be with the Lord. And if you know anything about Daryl, he was a guy that made a whole lot of bicycles for a whole lot of kids. He'd buy a lot of cheap bikes at yard sales or different things, fix them up. And he used to give them to us over at in Vermilion County for when we did the clothes drives or the clothes things for kids at North Vermilion and South Vermilion. We finally had to tell him enough was enough because he'd give us 15, 20 bicycles to give out at the school, and we couldn't hardly find enough kids to give them to. So. And then he did the same thing at South Vermilion. So he's affected a lot of kids' lives and things too. And then Phil Keith, we talked about that Sunday. His funeral is tomorrow, so keep his family, Jamie Bunch and all of them in your prayer list. So that's 3 families right now that are dealing with loss with all of these things. So just kind of lift them up, pray for God's peace upon them, and that these things will draw them closer to the Lord. We pray for the ministries in the church as they all start getting ramped up again, and all of those things. So let's go ahead and pray for just a second. Father God, we just thank you for this place that we have that just centers around all that you do here at the church, and for the witness it is in this community, for the place of sanctuary that it is for us, whether we come into the sanctuary, if we watch things from home, if we listen to them on the radio, we catch them on Facebook, or just whatever it happens to be, Lord. And we're just thankful for this place and for the good that it does for us, the good that it does for the others in the community, with all the things that happen out of here, and all the people that are trying to be your image on this earth. And Lord, we lift up these folks, these 3 families that are grieving at this time, that they will know your peace and feel your presence in their lives on these times. And we're thankful that Randy came through his surgery okay, and that he's going to get back to rehab, and hopefully he can recover there like the plan is, and he can get back to being home here. And Meredith as well, as she recovers from her surgery. Lord, we just ask that you be with her and help that recovery to go well. And Lord, just bless our country with everything that's going on, and all of our leaders, Lord, and just shine your light up into all these things. And all this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. I'll tell you, Meredith, Frank told me Sunday that Meredith, with the way her incision is and all that kind of thing, that she couldn't hardly rest in bed, and she couldn't hardly sit in the chairs that they had, and he had to go out and buy her a nice recliner for her to sit in. And I'm thinking, good deal, Meredith. But there's an old story that's told about a golfer that had a problem with and had some surgery and things, and then he was back at the doctor for his checkup, and the doctor's looking at him and looking at the charts, and the man's wife was sitting there, and the doctor said, "You play golf?" And the guy said, "Yeah, I play golf." And the doctor looked at his chart again. He said, "Man, I'm telling you, you're going to need to have a really good set of golf clubs." And the guy said, "What?" And he said, "You're going to have a really good set. You need to go out. If you're going to play golf, you need to go out and get yourself a really good set of golf clubs, the best you can buy." And the guy said, "For my injury?" And he said, "Yeah, for your injury. You need to go get a really good set of golf clubs." And the guy said, "Well, for my injury, I don't understand what." And finally the doctor said, "Hey, work with me here. I'm trying to help you out and get you a good set of golf clubs." I think Meredith, hopefully that's not what you pulled on Frank. Frank, I got to have a recliner. You're just going to have to go out and buy me a recliner and all that. But she is recuperating, and it is helping her to relax and all those things. And I didn't have her kind of surgery, of course, but a few years ago when I had back surgery, and when you can't get comfortable trying to sit down, and you can't get comfortable in a chair, and you can't get comfortable on the bed, you need something that's going to make you comfortable. So Meredith, we're still praying for you and hope you get better, and we're waiting for you to come and start your thing with all the kids and everything again. I wanted to show you something here. I had everything up ready to go until it just went off. I don't know if you can see in this picture. I'm gonna zoom it in, but so that you can see the kind of the grand span of it. What there is a man right here. He's at the end of a 50-foot tether tied to a helicopter being flown in for transmission work. These big tower lines that you see that kind of run everywhere, and There's one out here on the edge of town, the wooden structure line. Well, sometimes you get places where you can't get trucks to them, and they've got to work them some other way. And there's a group of people out of West Virginia that will come in, and that's a lineman tied at the bottom, and the helicopter picks them up, flies them to wherever they have to work on that tower, and then he hovers there while that guy works. Sometimes the guy is able to do it off the end of the rope. Sometimes he has to get on the structure and get untied. Sometimes they actually set on a platform on the side of the helicopter. And I was watching that today as part of what I had to do, go out and make sure that they were doing everything safely, although I'm not so sure I know what is safe in a helicopter. As long as it keeps flying, it seems to be safe. But anyway, they have this thing, and if you do any kind of labor work out in the public, I mean, not at your home or for yourself, but if you're employed and you do any kind of labor, you have to have what's called a job safety analysis before you start, where you cover all the things that could go wrong, all the kind of protective thing. We call them PPE. You've heard a lot about that with all the COVID stuff, but the hard hat, safety glasses, what kind of boots, what do you got to do about all this? And so these guys are having this conversation, and there's the pilot, and there's two linemen and a groundman. And they got in, the pilot and the main lineman, they got talking about if something goes wrong, because that pilot has this little red lever right there on his joystick. He pulls that lever, it cuts that rope loose, and that whoever's hanging at the bottom, doesn't matter how high they are, they drop them to the ground. So they were having their discussion, and the man that was going to be at the bottom of that 50-foot tether said, if something goes wrong, hit the lever and just drop me. And the pilot said, I am not dropping you. The lineman said, if something goes wrong, you need to drop me. And the pilot said, I don't care what goes wrong. I will never drop you. And the guy said, this is getting to be, it's not heated, but it's a serious conversation. They're talking literally life or death. And the guy said that was going to be at the end of the tether said, I'm not worth as much as that helicopter. If something happens, you drop me and you take care of everything else. And that pilot looked at him and said, you need to understand, I don't care what happens. I am not going to drop you. I'm not going to leave you. I am not, if I have got you, I am not turning loose of you no matter what. And we will get through this together. Even if I have to, he said, even if I got to fly you all the way and drop you in the middle of a hospital, we are going in together. We are coming out together. And one of the things that got me thinking about was, because his words are almost what you read out of the Bible and you hear about God. I will never leave you nor forsake you. I am not turning you loose. And part of our message Sunday was about God telling Abraham with Hagar and Ishmael, I got this. You can turn loose of the controls. You can give it to me. I got it. And sometimes we don't want to turn loose, and and sometimes we don't have that kind of faith. What was amazing to me though was how much faith that man on the ground had in that pilot. And he was literally putting his life in his hands. And it wasn't like they just kind of went up and went over. They were flying across 465. They were flying over gravel pits. They were flying over other transmission lines. The big ones have 345,000 volts in them and all kinds of different things. And after actually with where they were, if the pilot got too high, he was even in the flight path for the passenger jets and things. And no matter where that guy was going, no matter where they had to fly to, that guy on the end of the tether totally trusted that pilot to get him there safely. There was no concerns at all on his face when they took off from the ground and they headed off. He was totally confident in that pilot and that he would be back safely, that no matter what happened, he was in good hands. And, we get to thinking about that, and here that man had that kind of faith in another man. And do we have that kind of faith in God? A couple of things to read you here. First one comes out of Deuteronomy, and Moses is speaking to the people, and he's telling them there's going to be tough times as you're going through this. In chapter 31, and he's talking about Joshua taking over, and he tells them, says, Joshua's going to cross with you. I'm not going with you into the promised land. Joshua's going to leave you into the promised land, and God's going to go ahead of you. He's going to take care of you just like he's done in this last 40 years, and like he did to Sihon and Og, the Amorites. He said, God's going to deliver everybody to you. But he says here in verse 6, he said, do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God is with you, and he will never leave you nor forsake you. And then also in Hebrews in chapter 13, the writer to the Hebrews says, be content with what you have, because God says, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. We say those words and we think about those things with God, but do we really take them to heart? Do we have the same kind of confidence in God that man at the end of that 50-foot tether had in that pilot? And when that pilot said, I won't leave you, and I am not going to give you up, I will get you to safety. And that guy on the ground went over, clipped into that helicopter, and off he went. You saw the picture of him flying. He was probably 100 feet off the ground in that picture. And they weren't just idling. When that pilot took off, he took off. I don't know if you could tell, but that rope was about that kind of an angle with the helicopter at the top, and that guy was kind of... But that's trust. That's faith. And God tells us the same thing that pilot told to that guy at the end of the tether. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. You can trust in me. I've got you. Moses was telling them there, said, God's going to be with you. He's going to take you in. And you can trust in him. Because just as he's done things for you in the past, that's what he was talking about with the Amorites. He said, he's going to do the same thing for you in the future. Hold on to God. And so, that's kind of the message for tonight is what kind of faith do you have in God? What kind of ways are you demonstrating your faith? That lineman demonstrated his faith in that pilot, not just by the words that they had. It's easy to have those words, but because he walked over to that helicopter and he clipped that big old clip into his harness, and he was ready to go. And it was, and are we the same way? When God says, I got it. When God says, I'll never leave you nor forsake you, are we willing to say, okay, let me clip in, Lord, you take it, I'm just a passenger? Do we have that kind of faith, or do we say, well, kind of high up there? What happens when we get over the trees? What happens when we got across the highway? What if you drop me? What if something goes wrong? We come up with all kinds of excuses rather than listening to God say, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And that lineman's confidence in that, and like we talked about Sunday, Abraham's confidence in God. When God told him, I've got it. You can let Ishmael go. I've got it. I've got it under control. And then at the end of our reading, it was that God did have it under control. He gave them water in the desert. He got them to where they were going. He Ishmael got to the point that he got a wife, he had children, he became a great archer, and a nation came from him, just like God said. And in that instance, Abraham had to let go. But it's the same thing. Do you trust God when God says, I got it? Are we able to hold on to it? Or do we have that kind of faith in God that says, Lord, pick me up, take me. I know it doesn't matter what's above me, what's around me, what's below me. You will never leave me. You are not going to drop me. You're not going to let me go. And I can turn my life over to you and trust you to get me to where I need to go, to live the life I need to live, and that you will get me back again. Because the other part was, the lineman didn't just stay out there. That pilot brought him all the way back to where it began, moved him from tower to tower to tower to tower. They did 11 of them, brought him back, set him back on the ground as good as he was. And that's what God does for us, And I couldn't help but think about those things today when I heard him say that. That's the first thing that popped in my mind. That's what God says. And so it made me think about my life. Made me think about, what am I doing? What kind of faith am I having? And am I trying to control it? Or do I have that same kind of confidence that says, Lord, you got it. I trust you. Take me to wherever you're going to take me. And bring me to wherever you're going to bring me. Because I know that you're not going to drop me. And I can trust you no matter where I go or whatever happens. So think about that. And think about what your life is demonstrating to others about your faith and your trust when things get rough or you've got to go places that you don't expect to go. And know that God's going to get you there and God's going to get you out. And he's not going to leave us behind. It doesn't matter how bad things get. God is not going to turn loose of us. He said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And so those are some of the best words that we can have out of the Bible for God's presence with us. So some of you, I'll see you on Sunday. Some of you, I may talk to you again next week on Wednesday. But God bless you all. Have a good evening. Have a good week. And go out and demonstrate your faith to those around you. Good night.